This week on Africa Health Check.
Vijana ni wale ambao wamependa kutembea kwa group. Ningependa vijana wote wapate chanjo.
The quarter meetings and teaching them how to practice washing hands.
We highlight some of the key youth activities.
Art to me was now more of a representation, something that I could represent. I could speak for the voices that have not been heard before.
That have aided in the fight against the pandemic. Hello, good day, and welcome to Africa Health Check, where we reflect on Africa's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I am Khokhontlejang Paladi. On today's episode, we will be discussing youth-led activities in the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But before we dive into that discussion, let us have a look at Africa in numbers. This week in Africa in Numbers, we look at the daily new COVID-19 infection rates on the continent and highlight the top 5 countries reporting the highest 7-day average rates as of the 16th of January 2022. Top of the list is Morocco, reporting over 6,600 infections per day, followed by Tunisia with a daily average of 5,600 infections. South Africa comes third highest with 4,700 daily reported infections, with Zambia and Ethiopia wrapping up the top 5 with about 1,800 reported infections per day. As always, for more on these and more statistics on the COVID-19 pandemic, log on to the official Africa CDC website. And that is our Africa in Numbers for this episode. As I've already mentioned, on this episode, we will be discussing youth activities and the immense role that young people of Africa have had to play in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. To help me discuss this, our guest panelist is Asha Mweri, who is the co-founder of Women Work and Director of Operations and Talent at Africa Management Institute. We also have our usual commentators, Dr. Marianne Morathi, who is the current chair of the Department of Medical Microbiology and Immunology and a senior research fellow at the University of Nairobi in Kenya, as well as Reverend Anthony Achampong, who is a pharmacist and a pastor from Ghana. Before we hear from these exceptional panelists, let us have a look at this week's feature.
My name is Emmanuel Mushi. I am a 28-year-old creative entrepreneur with a unique background in marketing and communications, arts, innovation, and social issues. My interest stems from understanding the need to engineer unique and sustainable solutions. I do see myself contributing to the building the creative industry in Africa, especially building infrastructures, capacities, and if possible, increasing the market share and visibility of everyday African stories, and particularly stories of those forgotten youth, those youth who are trapped in the system, and those youth who are still unscripted. Arts was more than an entertainment. It was more than a form of communication. Art to me was now more of a representation. And so I was fortunate enough to get a MasterCard Foundation scholarship. And with this scholarship, it kind of gave me exposure to innovation and creativity from a global point of view. So for me now, the task was put that into emphasis and kind of make that locally relevant. Our DNA as visual aided stories is woven around endorsing and celebrating the history, culture, and pride of Pan-Africanism. And to us, one of the elements that could capture all that is the pride and the beauty of an African woman, to try to empower the representation of an African woman in such a male-dominated society. Since we're trying to do a COVID campaign and the campaign is about Corona, we should have our main character of the campaign be named after Karina. So I started asking questions like, okay, so what what hair will Karina have? Is it Bantu knots? Is it, cornrows? What African jewelry will Karina be representing, will be wearing, Far more importantly, we thought Karina could be that symbol of a woman, a resilient woman who, besides everyday challenges, she could adapt, rise to any obstacle and make her way towards the progress. Karina was a symbol to all these women who strive for higher ideals from Tanzania, across the continent and across the globe. I think asking these questions kind of gave us this social conscience to say, you know what, we're going to go forward with our project. And by doing that, we developed a character. From a community point of view, those neighborhoods and nearby areas which we installed those murals have benefited by having readily accessible artworks. We created public art that freely educates, inspires, and speaks to the community. And by doing so, by selecting areas to fix up walls and aesthetically transform the area in these neighborhoods, we kind of give value in these neighborhoods. So when we're installing murals on ground, we'd have people coming to us and ask, are you guys saying Corona is now in our neighborhood? Should we still take precautions? And so these conversations were starting dialogues. Another socio-economic aspect that I really liked and enjoyed was how smart the street vendors were, because they started selling face masks right next to our mural sites as a way for them to make money. And I kind of like how smart of these other young street vendors went on to jump on this opportunity like that. The last thing is really, it's a tribute. It's a tribute to all those people behind me that have strived so hard to nurture my idea and get it out there.
Such a really inspirational story from our feature this week. And now we're going to dive right into the discussion. And I'm going to start with Asha. Maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and what is it that you do?
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Asha Mweru. I am born and raised in Kenya, but right now I call Ghana Accra home. And over my career, I've worn different hats, but two things have remained very, very close to my heart and the things that I work on currently. One is making sure that women, and especially youthful women, are really able to access opportunities. So I am co-founder of an organization called Women Work, which is a network for professionals and entrepreneurs across Africa. And the second thing I'm really, really passionate about is really making sure that people are able to build successful businesses in Africa. Small and medium businesses are the future of Africa, and so I'm really, really excited about doing that. And so I lead the people function at Africa Management Institute, which is focused on training the next generation of entrepreneurs in Africa.
Absolutely great. Tell us, what is your journey? What is your story? What inspired you to get into training young entrepreneurs, or what inspired you to also get into the work of Pan-Africanism?
It's really interesting. How I got into the journey is through failure. So I started my first business and it was a big flop, which is a good thing because sometimes failure really, really teaches you. And so I was inspired by the fact that I was not the only one, and I am not the only one who started a business and failed. And I started to think about what then are some solutions that could really, really help people like myself, women, entrepreneurs across the board, really build solid businesses that could scale, not just in a specific country, but more Pan-African. So that's my inspiration. That's kind of why I do what I do every single day. It comes from a very personal basis and really gets me excited to see youth and people able to build businesses, access opportunities, and it's something I'm committed to as well.
Absolutely. And they do say that failure is the best teacher, which is quite ironic. But I think it's a fact for most of us. We've learned through the worst mistakes that we've ever made, or even the worst failures that we've ever experienced. So now let's talk about youth-led activities in the COVID response. Maybe you can shed a light about what young people that you work with in Ghana were doing to contribute to the COVID-19 response.
Yeah, so I'm going to first focus some conversation on the work that I've done in Kenya with women work. We quickly realized when the pandemic hit that businesses needed to transform digitally. And by that, I don't mean a complex digital transformation. I simply mean being able to access customers online. And so we created a program called the Digital Future Program that allows any person on this watching is able to really create and understand how to be able to sell whatever product they have online. So we'll take you through the art and science of buying and selling online for your customers. So that's one of them. And so far, we've trained about 500 individuals. It's been great. Lots of people said, wow, I really didn't know this. I just thought having a Facebook page is enough. And that's not enough. And they've learned a lot of that. So that's kind of one of the activities that we've done to respond to the pandemic specifically. On the other front, on Africa Management Institute, we run a program, of course, with partners to just ensure that businesses understand how to be able to survive during the pandemic. You needed to kind of adjust your cash flows, adjust a lot of your operations to ensure that you have enough money, that you have enough leeway to really make sure that your business doesn't close down. So we had a program called Survive to Thrive, which has run over the past year and a half and had really, really great success as well.
Really great stuff. I'm going to jump to Reverend Anthony Achampo. Maybe you could share some of the youth-led activities that young people in your country, or the young people that you work with, engaged with as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, some of the youth put themselves together to offer education to lots of people, especially by the use of internet, social media, to debunk and then to fight misinformation and fake news on the internet. And especially the youth health workers collaborated with radio stations and then used the visibility of youth on social media to advise, to educate, to encourage, in order to reduce anxiety, stigma, and the fear about calls. That is one of the areas that these people did. And then also to set up advocacy groups, support systems where people, in fact, some of the youth pulled a lot of resources, money, bought food items, PPEs, and distributed in the rural areas. Of one particular instance, this is a 1 million mask project where these youth bought about 1 million masks and took them to the hinterland, took them to the villages and distributed to people. Of particular mention, which I believe you'll be interested in, is the innovation. There is a particular, I don't know if I was a vertical bucket, which someone invented. Is an automated system to help with the hand washing, which the banks and many institutions adopted. Kenya and US, they are coming from my University of Science and Technology Mathematics. They put themselves together to make locally made ventilators for use in health facilities. So these are some of the things that some of our young people put their heads together to contribute to the fight of COVID.
Absolutely. And I'm happy that you mentioned innovation, Reverend Achempong. There's this joke that was making rounds in Botswana that most of our mainline churches often don't give young people an important role in the church until COVID hit. And now we needed young people because they're tech savvy to help the churches to go on Zoom and to live stream. And all of a sudden, young people became important and were given important roles in the church for the first time. Thank you so much, Reverend. I'm going to jump to Dr. Marianne. I know you work a lot with young people in academia and outside academia as well. Maybe you could share some of the outstanding youth-led activities that you witness young people engaging in to respond to COVID-19.
Yes, and in fact, some of the work students did, or the youth that I work with, was recognized by UNICEF and UNESCO, in that they came up with a very innovative tool. Again, we're talking about innovation. They came up with an app within the University of Nairobi, and this app is called RADA. In Swahili, it means stay woke or stay ready. And in that app, they created a network where, because, with the pandemic, one item came up, and that was social distancing, online learning. So the youth, where they would meet and interact, suddenly they were not interacting amongst themselves with their teachers and members of the public. So with this app, the youth felt they were connected. This app helps them connect with different other youths within the campus, within the university. And also this app created an avenue to deal with mental health. Remember that isolation, distancing created some mental health challenges. Again, as humans, we are social. So when you tell us not to see one another, there was a bit of a depression that was going around. But with this app now, the youth could quickly reach for help. Counseling services, psychiatric services as well were applied in this app. And again, it's now created a whole avenue, not just at the University of Nairobi. It's been opened up countrywide for other youth in other universities to be able to participate in. And it has created such a great venture for them to be able to talk, interact, and once in a while plan up meetings and talk about other innovations. Too, and if you can allow me to talk this quickly, again, with the youth that I work with in the medical setting, the medical students came together, created a funds drive so that they could also have access to PPEs, not just for themselves, but for other nurses and medical doctors at the largest hospital in Kenya, that is at Kenyatta National Hospital. This event was graced by several people, important players, both in the government and the NGOs, and it was youth-led. It was very, very, it helped us. It created an avenue for this youth, again, to interact with many people, interact with important people, both in government, in other settings, to drive a very important aspect here, and that's the provision of PPEs. And they needed PPEs the most, and then hospitals needed PPEs the most. So, we cannot do without the youth.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Marianne, and really wonderful work that the young people continue to be engaged in to respond or help in the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We're going to continue this conversation on the other side, but for now, let us have a look at the word on the street.
My advice to the youth is that they should also go to the health center, they should take the vaccine. And before going there, they should make sure they eat very well. If they are able to do that, they will not have any side effects concerning the vaccine.
My message to the youth is that they shouldn't give up. The corona is there, and we have to live with it. We have maneuvered the past year, and we are still going on.
Regarding the vaccine in the youth, I can encourage them to go and vaccinate. They must not listen to the social media and news. They must go and vaccinate. It is very important for their lives.
And that is the word on the street on what young people have been doing in their respective countries to help contribute to the COVID-19 response. I'm going to take the last segment of our discussion with our amazing panelists. I'm going to start with you, Asha. Just tell us about some of the challenges that, young people face on the ground in an attempt to help contribute to the COVID-19 response, and how maybe you were able to help young people overcome those challenges.
Yeah, so I'm going to mention two big problems, and I think this one cuts across the board. Wherever you are, you always hear this, and I don't even think it's just youth. I think it's majority people. One, it's access to finance or access to capital, right? So we have this really innovative idea, but we need capital to actually be able to do it, to execute on it. And the first question I hear, and this question I hear all the time, Asha, where do I get the money? Right? So how do we provide access to capital in ways that, we know youth don't have tractors, large pieces of land to show you as collateral, right? So how do we create financial products for youth that does not require collateral or does already leverage whatever they have, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is something that I actually think we should definitely try and do a lot more often is being able to make sure that we are listening to youth. Young people have such amazing ideas. They're pushing the limits. They really, really want to change things. And I think those two things, if gradually solved, could really open up the doors for youth. And I'm seeing a lot of businesses and I'm seeing a lot of organizations, foundations really trying to solve one for finance. I'm seeing people offer loans to youth, to be people starting businesses without the need for large collateral. And I'm seeing people who want to pay it back forward. So I'm seeing those two happen. It's gradual, but I don't think all changes must be matter. I think some change can be gradual as long as it's moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. Reverend, we have seen young people's skills, expertise, that they're vibrant, they have the energy, and they have proven themselves to be agents of change and development. Why are we still not creating an enabling environment for them to be able to assist in the development of our respective countries, and in this particular context, in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, what I would say is that there is still sort of a gaping hole, a black hole in the development of national policies for the population, not just in Ghana, but how they live in Africa as a whole. And we are still refusing to believe that the future of Africa is the youth. Well, when the crisis came, last year, lockdowns, the greatest segment of people that took the hit were the youth. Apart from the fact that many could not go to school, how about youth unemployment? Youth unemployment. Many lost their jobs. Those who were in apprenticeship, those who were learning trade, couldn't go to work. And mind you, Ghana is not Accra, and Ghana is not Kumasi. These are the large cities, the urban centers. Most of the youth come from the villages, come from the towns, come from the hinterland into the city. There are several thousands of graduates who cannot find jobs to do. And I believe that if any of our opinion leaders, our political leaders, are listening and to this broadcast, which I really recommend to them very highly, what I would say is this, that we need to refocus and redesign our national policies with a view to enhancing and dealing with youth education and youth employment, and then also to provide certain interventions for people that become victims of such challenges. Let me cite some examples. During the COVID, there were news about that young ladies were being violated, sexual violence here and there, with this attendant mental health issues, frustration, fear, anxiety, pain, and all this kind. But as of now, our political leaders and opinion leaders don't seem to have a grip on the fact that we need to put something down, create enabling environment for our young people to be properly educated and to be able to, like Asha said, give them some economic means to be able to set themselves up and prove their method, prove their work. And I think that if we are able to come along with some of such interventions, it will help a lot. It will help our youth. It will help our country.
Thank you so much for that, Reverend Anthony Achempo. I'm going to jump to Dr. Marianne, and I want you to speak to a stakeholder in Africa who's listening to this right now on what they can do to play a pivotal and supportive role towards supporting youth-led activities in the response to COVID-19.
To a stakeholder, and first of all, I will talk or repeat what you just said, the joke in Botswana, where the youth finally got an opportunity to lead on something. And here is really where the key point is. We need to listen to the youth. They are reading more, watching more news, very innovative. They have very creative ideas, and it's about time we started listening to them. We started incorporating them on our tables, our decision-making tables. And I have to also also listen to them on what they're going through, the challenges they may be facing. Yes, we've talked about financial challenges. We've talked about having their voice heard, but also as a health scientist or a health practitioner, I'd want to talk about their state of health. You can see in the last 2 years, particularly in my country or East Africa, we saw a high rate of teenage and youth pregnancy. And not just that, we saw also high rates of sexually transmitted diseases because our children or our youth were more at home, not being engaged. And that's another key thing here. We need to engage them more and also talk about real life situations here. Part of them is being their sexual health, mental health, dealing with any challenges that they may be facing when it comes to health-related matters, as much as we engage in them in coming up with different innovations. In my setting, I've seen them also come up with very good innovations in matters of hand washing facilities. I've seen them being taken around in schools, taken around the streets where they use mechanics, where you place your foot and the water. And again, this has been a youth-led initiative. Hence, you're keeping them busy, they're engaged, and you're giving them a foot on the table, which again chases away all these other vices that may bring some challenges, as I mentioned. So again, we need to give them a voice, include them in our activities, and have youth-led initiatives.
Absolutely powerful statement to stakeholders on supporting young people. I'm going to now jump to Asha. I want you to speak to a young person in Africa who's been doing so much on the ground to support their communities in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. And maybe they're being demoralized and discouraged because of lack of support and many other obstacles that you mentioned earlier. What is your message of encouragement to them?
There's always this really interesting picture, I'm sure people have seen it, where somebody is digging, right? And just before they reach that big gold mine or is it diamond, they stop and they say, oh, I'm so tired. There's no gold or diamonds down here. And it just needed another, dig. And so what I want to say is that while it's hard sometimes. And I think social media also allows us or makes us post the glamorous side of life. So when you go to social media, you only see people driving flashy cars. They never really tell you about many, many days they got nose, the days that they're worst. So I want to just encourage you that whatever you see, whatever really stimulates you, you say, I want to be like that person, remember that they were also digging, right? And the difference is maybe they didn't give up. I think, circumstances could be different, but whatever you see online is the highlight, is the best part of our lives. Yeah. So don't always believe that, right? Your life is as good. So keep doing what you're doing. Learn, educate yourself, connect to other people. You'll get there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I just want to summarize this discussion by hearing just one word from each one of you as your parting shot. One word that you think summarizes the youth-led activities that young people have been undertaking to contribute to the COVID-19 response for the last, almost 2 years now of COVID-19. So just one word, not a sentence, just one word that you believe summarizes the young people's role in Africa in responding to COVID-19. I'm going to start with the Reverend Anthony Achampong. Your one word?
Resilience.
Resilient. Love that. Dr. Marianne?
The future.
And Asha, your one word?
My word is limitless.
Limitless. I love that. Limitless, resilient, and future. Thank you so much, Asha, Dr. Marianne, as well as Reverend Anthony Achampong, as usual, for a really fruitful and enriching conversation. I certainly hope that a stakeholder, a young person in Africa has been motivated and inspired by your sentiments today. We have come to the end of this episode. And remember to keep in touch and connect with Africa Health Check on all our social media platforms. Until we meet again, same time, same place. Remember that the future is Africa, the future is today.